Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are moving on to equations with fractions 2. Okay, we're using the same steps. It's just the fractions are a little bit more complicated. Okay, we'll go through the steps. The first thing is you need to find a common denominator. The lowest common denominator is best. And you're going to multiply each term by that lowest common denominator. We use a bracket, and we show that we're multiplying by that lowest common denominator. Then what we do is we divide to remove the denominators that are there. The whole point in solving the equations this way is to get rid of the fraction. That's the denominator, the part on the bottom. Now, when you divide to remove that denominator, there's often something left. So we need to multiply what's left really by each term, okay? Then you're going to gather any like terms that you have. You're going to move the variables to the left side. You're going to remove the add or subtract number. And lastly, you're going to remove a multiply number. That means that we have it solved. All right. I'm going to do an example of what you would have seen last week. So here we have fractions. We want to get rid of the 4 and the 2 on the bottom. Those are the denominators. So we're looking for the lowest common denominator. We always start with the highest one here. So we're going to start with the 4. And 4 goes into 4, 8, 12, etc. Now we're looking for the smallest of those that 2 will also divide into. So in fact, that is 4. Okay, so we're going to multiply each term. So I'm going to put a bracket around the x here, the x there, and the 1 there. And we're going to multiply all 3 of those terms by a 4. Now we know a term is connected by an equals or an add or by a subtract. Okay, so now only 2 of these have a denominator to remove. The other one has nothing to remove, so this won't be reduced. It'll stay a 4. So let's start reducing by dividing. So the second step is to divide to get rid of the 4 on the bottom. So 4 divides into 4 to give you 1. So we have 1 left at the top. 2 divides into 4 to give you 2 left. Now nothing to divide, so that stays a 4. Okay, now what's left multiplies what's inside the bracket. So 1 times x is going to give us 1x or x. Then comes our equals sign. Then the 2 is left at the top. It's going to multiply the x, so that's going to give us 2x. Okay, now there's a 4 left at the top. The 4 is going to multiply the 1 to give you 4. Now there's a plus in between. Now we want to move all the variables to the left side, so I'm going to subtract 2 x's from both sides to get rid of it. That gives us 0 x's on the right. So x, or the invisible 1x, so 1 minus 2x gives us negative 1x. And then on the right side we've got positive 4. Now we need to solve for x. We can't have negative 1x, we need positive 1x. So the way to get this to be positive is to just divide the negative away, which means we have to divide this side by a negative, and negative 1 divided by negative 1 gives us 1x, or positive x, and 4 divided by negative 1 gives us negative 4. We solved it. Okay, the difference today with the kinds of questions that we're going to see is that these questions have more than one part at the top of the fraction. So see what we have here at the top of this fraction, 3x plus 6, 2 parts at the top. The next one of the fractions, right, has 2x minus 1. So more than one part at the top. It's really solved exactly the same way. We just have to be careful what we're multiplying. So start off by looking for our lowest common denominator. In this case, we only have one denominator of 5, so our lowest common denominator is 5. We have to take this whole term, the whole fraction, and multiply it by our common denominator of 5. Take the 3 on the other side and multiply it by 5. Now we're going to divide to remove that 5 at the bottom. So 5 divides into 5 to give us 1, and nothing divides on that side, so it's going to stay a 5. Now, that 1 is going to multiply everything at the top. So 1 times 3x gives us 3x. And 1 times positive 6 gives us positive 6. The parts have to be connected, right, by the addition or subtraction that we get when we calculate it. Next comes our equal sign, and 5 times the 3 gives us 15. Now we need to get the x all by itself. We need to remove the add and subtract first. So that's an add 6. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. Bring down what's left. We have 3x on the left. On the right, 15 minus 6 is going to give us 9. The next is to get rid of the 3 timesing the x. So we're going to divide by the exact same number, 3. 3 divides by 3 to give us 1. We've got x all by itself. And then on the right-hand side, 9 divides by 3 to give us 3. We solved it. Okay, let's go to the second example. 3 different terms here because there's a fraction, then we add a whole number, and then we equal an x. So all 3 terms have to be multiplied by our common denominator. Now, in this case, we only, again, have one denominator. So our lowest common denominator is 3. So we're going to take each of these terms and multiply them by 3. The whole point in doing that is to get rid of the 3 at the bottom because 3 is going to divide by 3 to give you 1. Now, nothing divides in the second or the third term. So the next step is to multiply. So that 1 is going to multiply the 2x to give you 2x. The 1 is going to multiply the negative 1 to give you negative 1. The next multiplication is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. Now notice there's a plus in front, so that's plus 9. Then comes our equals sign, and then the 3 multiplies the x to give you 3x. Now, the next step is to add any like terms, and what you should recognize is that on the left side we got 2 numbers we can put together. Careful, the sign in front belongs to the number. So this is like negative 1 and positive 9 are going to get put together. That's going to give us positive 8. So those 2 things became positive 8. Bring down what's left, 2x. And then on the other side, 3x. Now, we need to get all the x's on the left side. So we're going to subtract 3 x's away from the right. And now find the x group on the other side. You can only subtract x's from x's. You can't subtract x from the whole number here, the 8. So we're going to subtract 3 x's. Those 3 x's are gone. We have 0 left on that side. So 2 x's minus 3 x's. This gives us negative 1x. Bring down our plus 8 is equal to, now nothing left on this side, so there's a 0. So what do we do now? We have a multiply by negative 1. We have an add 8. We have to get rid of the add 8 first. So we're going to subtract 8. That gives us negative 1x is equal to 0 minus 8 is negative 8. Divide then to get rid of the negative 1. So negative 1 divided by negative 1 gives us positive 1. And negative 8 divided by negative 1 is going to give us positive 8. So x is going to equal positive 8. Solved. Okay, we're moving on to more complicated example now because we've got fractions with 2 parts on the left side and the right side, and we also have 2 different denominators. Okay, so we start by thinking about a lowest common denominator. Start with the highest number, which is 7. So our lowest common denominator is going to start with 7. Can 5 go into 7 evenly? No. Then we go to 14. Can 5 go into 14? No. The next one is 21. No. Okay, then 28, no. The next is 35, and yes. So 35 becomes our common denominator. So put a bracket around the whole top of those fractions. Okay, and now we're going to multiply by that common denominator of 35. The whole point in doing that is that 5 will divide into 35 to give you 7, and we got rid of the 5 at the bottom. 7 divides into 35 to give you 5, and we got rid of the 7 at the bottom. Okay. Now, the next part is to multiply the what's left. So we got a 7 left at the top. It has to multiply the x, which is the first term there, and it also has to multiply the 5. So 7 times x gives us 7x, and 7 times 5 gives us 35. Now, that's a positive 7 times a positive 5, so it's going to be connected with a plus. Then we get our equal sign, and now this 5 is going to multiply those two parts. So 5 times 2x gives us 10x, and then we have to worry about our connector as well for the last part. A positive times a negative gives us a negative, and 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, now no like terms to gather on the left, no like terms to gather on the right. So now we have to get all the x's to the left. So we have positive 10x's here, so we're going to minus 10x's. Find the x group on the other side and minus 10x's from that. Okay. Now, if we want, we can do it all on the same line. We can get rid of the add 35 now by subtracting 35. Okay. That gives us 0 here. Now remember, you also have to minus 35 from the other side. So you've done it. Find the number group on both sides, find the x group on both sides. So what's left? 7x's minus 10x's. That would give you negative 3x's. Then we have our equals sign. Then negative 25 and negative 35 gives us a bigger negative, and that gives us, in fact, negative 60. Okay. Now, the next step is to get rid of the negative 3 timesing the x. So we're going to do the opposite, which is divide by negative 3. Do that on both sides, divide by negative 3. Negative 3 divides by negative 3 to give you 1x. And that means x is all by itself. And then a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 60 divided by 3 is 20. We solved it. Okay, example 4. 3 terms now. All 3 terms have to be multiplied by the common denominator. So put a bracket around them. Okay, all the top part, and we have to multiply by the common denominator. So we're looking for our lowest common denominator here. Start with our biggest number. So we start with 3. 2 doesn't go into 3, so we go to the next number, which is 3 goes into 6. 2 also goes into 6, so 6 is our common denominator. So we're going to multiply each of those brackets that we put there by our common denominator of 6. Again, the whole reason for doing that is so that we can get rid of the number on the bottom. So 2 divides into 6 now to give us 3. 3 divides into 6 to give us 2. And nothing divides on that side, so it's going to stay a 6. Whoop. So now we're going to multiply the 3 that's left by everything inside the bracket. So the 3 is going to times the x to give you 3x. And the 3 is going to multiply the positive 2 to give you positive 6. Okay. Now what we have is positive 2 times x. Positive 2 times x gives us positive 2x. And positive 2 times positive 4 gives us positive 8. And now on the right side, 6 times 12 gives us 72. Okay. The next thing is to add any like terms. On the left side, we can see 3x and 2x. That's added together to give us 5x. And positive 6 and positive 8, that's added together to give us positive 14. Okay, that's going to equal 72 on the right. Now, we're looking to get x all by itself, so we have a multiply and an add. We have to get rid of the add first, so opposite is to subtract 14 from both sides. The add 14, subtract 14 becomes a 0. If I bring down what's left, I got 5x on the left side, and then an equal sign, and 72 minus 14, well, 72 minus 10 gives us 62, minus 4 gives us 58. Okay. Now, the next is to divide both sides by 5 to get rid of the 5 next to the x. and 5 divides by 5 to give us 1, and x is equal to, now 58 doesn't divide evenly by 5, so we can just leave it as a fraction. We want to leave it as an improper. We just want to make sure that it doesn't reduce. So 5 is a prime number and it doesn't divide into 58, so our answer is 58 over 5. All right, example 5. Again, looking to multiply each term by our lowest common denominator. So the first is a fraction with 2 parts, the second part is a whole number, and then the third part is a fraction with 2 pieces again. So 3 terms separated by a subtract and an equals. Now those 3 parts have to be multiplied by our lowest common denominator. So we start with our highest number, which is 8. 8 goes into 8, but 6 doesn't go into 8. So the next number would be 16. 6 doesn't go into 16, so the next number is 24, and 6 goes into 24, so there's our common denominator. So we're going to multiply each term by the lowest common denominator, which is 24. That means each bracket that we've put up there. Now, only 2 of them are going to divide to reduce this 24. Okay, so the 6 divides into 24 to give you 4. Nothing divides, so it's going to stay at 24. 8 goes into 24 to give you 3. So only 2 of them were reduced by getting rid of the number on the bottom. But whatever's left has to multiply what's in the bracket. So 4 is going to multiply the x to give you 4x. 4 is going to multiply the -2 to give you -8. Then we have this subtract, okay? So now we have to think about this. -24 times 2 gives us -24, okay? That sign needs to be included in the multiplication. Then comes our equal sign. 3 times x gives us 3x, and 3 times -4 gives us -12, okay? Now, what you should see is on the left-hand side, we have some like terms we can put together. So -8 and -24 gives us -32. We have 4x is minus 32 is going to equal 3x minus 12. Now, we have to remove the x's from the right side to the left, so we're going to minus 3 x's, find the x group on the other side, and subtract 3 x's from there. That gets rid of those, okay? On the same line, we can do this. We can also remove the subtract 32 number by doing the opposite, which is add 32. Find the number group on the other side and add 32. So that gets rid of that, okay? 0 numbers on the left. So now let's bring down what we have left. Okay, 4x's minus 3x's gives us x. On the right side, we have -12 and positive 32. When we put those together, what we end up with is 20. Okay, we just solved it. Let's look at question 6. Okay, a little bit more complicated, 3 fractions, 3 different denominators. Okay, so the first fraction has 2 parts we'll put a bracket around. The second fraction has 2 parts we'll put a bracket around. The third part has a 1 term at the top. So we're going to take all 3 of those terms, right? We know there's 3 terms because there's a fraction, a subtract, a fraction, an equal, and then a fraction. So 1, 2, 3 fractions. Okay, we're going to multiply by our lowest common denominator. Start with our biggest number, which is 8. Okay, 8 goes into 8, but 6 doesn't. The next number 8 goes into is 16, but 6 doesn't. The next number 8 goes into is 24. Okay, so now does 3 go into 24 as well? Yes, so that's our common denominator. So each term is going to be multiplied by that common denominator of 24. Now, again, the whole reason for doing that is to get rid of the number at the bottom. So 6 will divide into 24 to give you 4. 8 divides into 24 to give you 3. and 3 divides into 24 to give you 8. Now, the what's left has to multiply everything inside the brackets. So the 4 is going to multiply the x to give you 4x. The 4 is going to multiply the -2 to give you -8. Now, this is where it's a bit tricky. This negative sign is going to go to the 3, and then that -3 is going to be applied to both parts. So -3 is going to multiply an x to give us -3x. -3 is going to multiply -4. A negative times a negative gives us a positive, and 3 times 4 is 12. The last piece, the 8 that's left, is going to multiply the x to give you 8x. Okay, now we need to gather any like terms. So on the left side, we got 4x's minus 3x's. That gives us an x. We've got -8 and we've got positive 12. So that's going to give us +4. And that's going to equal 8x's on the right side. So now we need to get the 8x's onto the left, so we're going to subtract 8x's, find the x group on the other side of the equal sign, and subtract 8x's. Okay, that's going to give us x minus 8x's is -7x's. Okay, at the same time, we can move the whole number over there. So this was an add 4, so we're going to subtract 4. Now, there is no number here. We can think of it as a 0 subtract 4, okay? So 0 subtract 4 is going to give us, in fact, -4 on this side. Now, we're going to lastly divide to get the x all by itself. So divide by exactly the same number, same sign. So we're going to divide by -7. We have to do the same sign because a negative divided by a negative is going to give us a positive x, and that's what we need. Okay, divide the other side by -7, and a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive. And 4 doesn't divide by 7 evenly, so it stays 4/7 and can't be reduced any lower. We just solved it. Okay, now, the big thing is to remember that both parts of the fraction at the top needs to be multiplied by what's left. Okay, go on and attempt the equations with fractions, or equations with fractions 2 assignment. All right, if you need to, go back and review the examples so that they can help you with solving the questions on the assignment. Okay, take care, everyone.